6-year-old Mia hadn't stopped wheezing in 4 days, and Daniel Reyes had $95 less than he needed to fix it. So when his supervisor warned him never to enter the CEO's private office, he almost listened. Almost. What he saw behind that door wasn't a woman changing her blouse. It was a woman hiding fractured bones, deep bruising, and a secret that could end her career by Friday. Vivian Hale didn't scream. She just stared at him like she was deciding whether he'd live to see morning. He spent the night convinced he was finished. He had no idea he was about to become the only person alive she could trust, and the one man who could destroy her with a single phone call. The bin outside room 5014 was overflowing, shredded paper spilling onto charcoal carpet, and Daniel stood frozen with his cart, staring at a door he'd been told never to open. His supervisor's voice still echoed in his head. Executive floor. Do not enter the CEO's private office. Empty everything else. Skip that one. But it was 11:40 p.m., and if the morning inspection found a mess outside her door, it wouldn't be his supervisor who took the blame. It would be him. He knocked twice, soft. No answer. He pushed the door open just enough to slide the bin liner through. The room wasn't empty. Vivian Hale stood in the center of it, back to him, one arm twisted behind her, fingers fumbling against something rigid beneath her blouse. She froze the instant the door creaked. Daniel caught it before he could stop himself. Thick fabric wrapped around her ribs, metal fastenings biting into skin, and beneath the edge of her open blouse, a line of deep bruising no one gets from sitting in a boardroom. She turned, slowly. Her face wasn't embarrassed. It was cold, calculating, already 3 moves ahead. Get out, she said. Daniel didn't need telling twice. He pulled the door shut behind him and stood in the hallway with his heart slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape his chest too. He didn't remember the elevator ride down or clocking out. He remembered sitting on the last bus at midnight, forehead against cold glass. Running numbers in his head, except now the numbers weren't about rent. They were about how many days he had left before HR called him into a room and ended everything. Mia was asleep at the neighbors when he got home, curled under a blanket that wasn't hers, one hand around a stuffed rabbit missing an ear. He carried her home in the cold, her breath rattling faintly against his shoulder, and laid her in the bed they shared. Then he sat on the floor beside it until 3 a.m, waiting for a phone call that never came. By the time his alarm went off, he hadn't slept. He got Mia dressed, made her oatmeal she barely touched, and pressed his hand to her back to feel the faint wheeze rattling under her ribs. You okay, bug? I'm okay, Daddy. She said it fast, the way kids do when they've learned their parent needs to hear it more than they need to say it. He dropped her at his neighbor's, kissed her forehead, and told himself it was just one more day. He didn't believe it. His badge worked at the front entrance. It worked at the service elevator. He rode up half expecting security to be waiting when the doors opened. Instead, Greg was leaning in the break room doorway, arms crossed, looking at him strangely. You're wanted upstairs, Greg said. Daniel's stomach dropped. Fired upstairs or 50th floor, Greg said. They said bring you up personally. I don't know what you did, man, but nobody gets a personal summons unless it's real bad or real big. Which one do you think it is? Greg just shrugged and stepped aside. The elevator ride felt longer than it had the night before. Every floor it climbed, Daniel rehearsed a different version of the conversation ahead. An apology, an explanation, a plea for his job, because without it, Mia's prescription would lapse in 6 days. And there was no version of that he could survive watching. The doors opened onto the 50th floor. This time there was no secrecy, no dim hallway. A woman in a sharp gray suit was already waiting. Mr. Reyes, this way. She didn't offer her name. She didn't need to. Everyone on this floor moved like they belonged to something larger than themselves, and Daniel felt every scuff on his boots screaming that he didn't. Vivian Hale's office looked nothing like it had the night before. The lights were on full now, hard and clinical, and she sat behind a glass desk, hands folded, dressed like nothing in the world had ever touched her. No sign of the corset, no sign of the bruising. Just a woman built entirely out of composure. Sit down, Mr. Reyes. He sat. His hands found the arms of the chair and gripped them like the chair might tip. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. Do you know what a fiduciary clause is? No, ma'am. It means if my board believes I'm medically unfit to run this company, they can remove me by vote. No trial, no appeal. Just a signature, and I'm finished. She said it flatly, like she was reading someone else's file. 4 months ago, I was in a helicopter that went down outside Denver. 3 fractured vertebrae, 4 broken ribs. The press was told I was on retreat in Kyoto. The board was told I sprained my ankle skiing. If either of them learns the truth, I lose everything I've spent 19 years building. Daniel's mouth had gone dry. Why are you telling me this? Because you already know it. She slid a folder across the glass, the same cold, deliberate motion he imagined she used to end careers. And because I know things about you too. He opened it with 2 fingers, like it might bite him. His name, his address, every medical bill from Mia's last hospital visit, the one that had put him $400 into a hole he still hadn't climbed out of, his custody paperwork, even a photocopy of the eviction notice he'd talked his landlord out of acting on 8 months ago. His face went hot. You had someone dig through my life in 1 day? I had someone dig through your life in 1 hour, Vivian said. You're not hard to find, Mr. Reyes. Desperate people rarely are. Daniel closed the folder, jaw tight. So what? You're going to use this to make sure I keep my mouth shut? No, she said. I'm going to use it to hire you. He blinked. What? I need someone close. Someone who sees me fall apart and doesn't run to a reporter or a board member with it. Someone with more to lose than to gain by talking. Her eyes didn't waver. You drive me. You carry what needs carrying. When my back gives out in a hallway full of investors, you're close enough to catch me before the cameras do. Discretion isn't optional. It's the entire job. And if I say no, then you go back to mopping floors on the ground level, and we both pretend Tuesday night never happened. A pause. But you won't say no. Why's that? $3,000 a week, she said. Full medical coverage, effective immediately. For you and for your daughter. The number hit him like a physical blow. $3,000 a week wasn't rent money. It wasn't even relief money. It was a different life entirely. A life where Mia's inhaler wasn't a monthly gamble, where an eviction notice was something that happened to other people. What's the catch? Daniel said. Because there was always a catch. The catch is that if you ever repeat what you saw in that office, I will personally make sure you never work in this city again. I don't make threats, Mr. Reyes. I make arrangements. She folded her hands. So, do we have an arrangement? Daniel looked at the folder still sitting between them, every fragile piece of his life laid out for a stranger to weaponize, and thought of Mia's breath rattling against his shoulder the night before. When do I start? He said. Something almost like relief flickered behind Vivian's eyes before it disappeared again. Tomorrow, 6 a.m., wear something that isn't a uniform. He stood to leave, and he'd almost reached the door when her voice stopped him. Mr. Reyes, he turned. You should know, she said. You're not the first person to see something they shouldn't have in this building. Her expression didn't change, but something in her voice went quieter. You're just the first one I decided to keep. Daniel didn't understand what that meant. Not yet, but the way she said it, like a warning wrapped inside an offer, followed him all the way down 50 floors, and he had the sudden, sinking feeling that whatever he just agreed to was only the beginning of something far bigger than a paycheck. The next morning, Daniel stood outside the private garage entrance in the only clean shirt he owned that wasn't a uniform, feeling like an imposter in his own skin. A black SUV rolled up at exactly 6, the driver's window lowered halfway. Get in the front, Vivian said. You're not a passenger. You're staff. He climbed in, and for the first 3 minutes, neither of them said a word. She scrolled through something on her phone with the same flat concentration she'd used to read his eviction notice the day before, like his entire life had been just another line item to process. There's a badge in the glove box, she said finally. Building access, 49th floor. There's also a car service app already set up under your name. You'll be picking me up, dropping me off, and staying within reach during events. If I text one word, hold, you come find me immediately. No questions, No hesitation. And if I mess it up? You won't, she said. You've been holding your life together with duct tape and stubbornness for 5 years. That's exactly the skill set I need. By Wednesday, he had a badge with his photo on it and an ID card that said executive assistant instead of custodial staff. By Friday, he was standing in a suit that cost more than his car had, holding a leather folder he didn't know the contents of, 3 feet behind Vivian Hale as she walked into a boardroom full of men twice his age who looked at him like he was furniture. Nobody explained anything to him. He learned by watching. He learned that when her left hand pressed flat against the edge of a table, it meant the pain in her spine was climbing, and she needed 30 more seconds before she could stand without flinching. He learned that when her voice dropped a register in a meeting, colder and slower, it meant she was 1 sentence away from either winning the argument or losing her composure entirely, and it could go either way. He learned which pills came at 9 and which came at 3, and that she never let anyone but him see her take either. They weren't friendly. That much was clear from the start. You're staring, she told him during his second week, catching him watching her knuckles whiten against a chair back during a call with investors. You looked like you were about to go down, Daniel said. I wasn't. You were. She shot him a look that could have cut glass. I don't need a babysitter, Mr. Reyes. Then stop needing to be caught, he said, and immediately regretted it, because her jaw tightened and she didn't speak to him again for the rest of the day. But the next morning she handed him a coffee without being asked, and neither of them mentioned it. 3 weeks in, everything cracked open. It was after a 4-hour dinner with a shipping conglomerate that wanted a merger. Vivian clearly despised but couldn't afford to walk away from. She'd smiled through all 4 hours of it, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, held her spine straight through a dinner chair that offered her no support at all. By the time they reached the elevator of her penthouse building, her face had gone the color of old paper. I'm fine, she said, before Daniel had even asked. She wasn't. Her legs gave out 3 steps into the foyer. Daniel caught her before she hit the marble, one arm hooking under hers, the other bracing her spine exactly where he'd learned it needed bracing. She was heavier than she looked and lighter than she should have been, like something in her had been running on empty for months and had finally stopped pretending. Don't, she gasped when he moved to lift her fully. Don't carry me like I'm... Just help me to the bedroom. I can walk if you just... Vivian. It was the first time he'd used her name without the title. Let me carry you. She stopped arguing. He carried her to the bedroom and set her down on the edge of the bed, as gently as he'd ever set down his own daughter after she fell asleep in the car. Then he knelt in front of her, the way he had 1,000 times tying Mia's shoes, and found the clasp on the brace beneath her blouse, the same one he'd glimpsed weeks ago through a half-open door, jammed against a fold of fabric, biting into skin that had clearly been screaming for hours. His fingers worked it loose. When the clasp finally released, Vivian made a sound she immediately tried to swallow back down, something between relief and a sob, and before he could stand, she leaned forward and pressed her forehead against his shoulder. He didn't move. He didn't say anything clever or comforting. He just let her breathe. When she finally sat back, something small and folded had slipped from the inside pocket of his jacket onto the floor between them. She reached down before he could stop her and unfolded it. A crayon drawing, a tall stick figure in blue, and a smaller one with yellow hair and a green balloon, both of them smiling under a lopsided sun. Is this your daughter? Vivian asked. Her voice had lost every trace of the boardroom in it. Mia, Daniel said. She drew it the week I got laid off from the warehouse. Told me the balloon meant everything was going to float up and be okay again. He almost laughed, but it came out closer to a breath. Kids say things like that. Is the insurance covering her treatments? She got the good inhaler on Monday, he said. She hasn't wheezed once since. First time in months. Vivian looked at the drawing for a long moment, her thumb tracing the edge of it like it was something fragile enough to break. Take tomorrow off, she said quietly. Take her somewhere, a park, anywhere that isn't a hospital or this building. You have the Kessler call at 10. I'll survive one meeting without you standing behind me, she said. Go be her father tomorrow. I'll still be broken on Monday. It was the closest thing to kindness he'd heard from her in 3 weeks. and it landed harder than the paycheck ever had. If this story is hitting you the way it's hitting me right now, do me a favor and hit subscribe to Single Dad's Story Room, because Daniel's story is only getting started and you do not want to miss what happens next. The following Monday, Daniel arrived at 6 a.m., like always, badge in hand, coffee in the other, expecting the same routine. The garage was empty. No SUV, no driver, no Vivian. He called her cell. It rang twice and went to voicemail. He tried the direct line to her office. A woman he didn't recognize picked up, her voice clipped and formal in a way none of Vivian's staff had ever used with him before. "Ms. Hale is unavailable," the woman said. "She's asked that all her personal staff be reassigned effective immediately." Daniel's stomach dropped straight through the floor. "Reassigned? I need to speak with her directly." "That won't be possible." "Is she okay? Did something happen?" There was a pause on the line, long enough that Daniel's pulse started climbing before the woman even answered. "I'm not authorized to discuss the board's decision," she said. "You should collect your things from the vehicle bay by noon." The board's decision. Daniel stood frozen in the empty garage, the folder Vivian had once slid across her desk flashing through his mind. The fiduciary clause, the 4 months she'd spent hiding fractured bones from the entire company, the threat that had hung over every single day they'd worked together. Someone had found out. Somehow, somewhere, the secret he'd promised on his daughter's life to protect had gotten out anyway. And if the board knew about Vivian's condition, that meant they also knew exactly who had been standing 3 feet behind her every single day for the past month, holding her upright when the cameras weren't looking. Which meant Daniel Reyes wasn't just about to lose the job that had changed his and Mia's life forever. He was about to become the man the board blamed for it. His phone buzzed in his pocket. One word from a number he didn't recognize. Hold. Daniel stared at the screen, his heart hammering, because that word only meant one thing. Vivian needed him. Right now, somewhere he couldn't see her. And for the first time since he'd walked through that forbidden door on the 50th floor, he had absolutely no idea whether he was walking toward the woman who'd changed his life or straight into the end of everything he'd fought to build for his daughter. If you made it to this point, then you deserve a special seat in this channel. Hit that subscribe button and drop where you are watching from in the comments. Every day we tell stories like this that keeps you watching and asking for more.